live from New Hampshire, but we're going to begin by talking about the city of my birth, the city that I lived in for a lifetime until a while ago, and the city that I love more than any other, and the city for which I am crying now. Because a lot of things have been done in New York City since Comrade de Blasio was elected to destroy all of the things that I did and even my predecessors that started with Ed Koch and my successor, Michael Bloomberg. De Blasio uniformly attempted to deconstruct all that, did a pretty damn good job in terms of making the city dangerous. Without any help and against the odds, Adams has done a pretty good job of keeping it safer than when he started out, then had to make all kinds of adjustments because of Cuomo and the Democrats in the legislature, who basically Adams is working with 7,000 to 8,000 more criminals on the street than would be there if I were the mayor or Bloomberg were the mayor. So I want you to think about that. That doesn't count. The months where I've been able to glean the numbers where 60% of the crime in Queens is caused by illegals that weren't there on the day that he came into office, but were given to him by the president that he criticized, Biden, that ended up getting him indicted. And when you want to say that something untoward was done in dropping his case, I can tell you that guy was indicted because he criticized Biden, just like I was indicted for being Trump's lawyer. I'm still indicted in Georgia and in Arizona for doing my job as a lawyer. When these reporters and Democrats talk about Republicans stepping on democracy, I say, what democracy? We didn't have any left. Not from my point of view, not from the point of view of Professor Eastland, not from the point of view of all of the people indicted with me, half of whom I don't even know. How the hell did I conspire with them if I didn't know them? What did I conspire to do? Find evidence of an election theft that actually took place. And they're back at it. They're back at it again. So now they've nominated, it looks like, an out-and-out socialist communist and lover of Islamic extremism, hater of Jews, and hater of all things decent about America. And, put it all aside, a man who is completely unqualified. If I interviewed him, I wouldn't know what to hire him for. He doesn't have any skills. He hasn't done anything. About the only thing he is a bullshit artist. I don't know what you use a bullshit artist for. Maybe he could be a barker at a carousel or something. A carousel for a Muslim extremist. Next time they have some kind of an event at one of the mosques that hides Muslim extremists, he can go and be the master of ceremonies. He loves Hamas, hates Israel, can't stand America. Completely despises our police. Has basically. What do you have the post that he put out, Ted, about our NYPD being racist? I would like you to know that the New York City Police Department is a non majority police department, meaning it's not majority white, black, brown. It hardly can be described as that changed. That maybe changed during my mayoralty, but I don't take the credit for it completely. It started with Koch, and it took 10 years to do. And we are now talking about people who are far better than him. We're talking about real Americans who put up their lives to save other Americans, not creep shit little Islamic extremist sympathizers who appear to be trained Marxists and completely stupid little liars, squirms that couldn't do an honest day's work if you gave it to them, never have. He should be organizing protests, not trying to organize the greatest city in the world. He will ruin, if this city's not ruined already, because Adams has made a valiant effort to bring it back with no help. Now, yes, but even now, he's got to work his way through a city council, as this guy comes from, that makes the Politburo under Gorbachev look good. And it could easily be absorbed into Red China or communist Venezuela. He wants to provide government grocery stores based on the wonderful model of the grocery stores in the Soviet Union, where there was no food, which is one of the reasons why communism fell in Eastern Europe. He wants to provide free almost everything. We're not going to need money anymore. The government will just give it to you. And then in return for that, you're going to have to say and do everything the government wants you to say and do. And if you criticize Mondami, I'm sure you'll be put in prison. This is probably the most dangerous era in New York City history. I don't know that New York City's ever been in such great danger. There are certain aspects of New York City and New York State in which you could have a very great academic argument as to whether, well, it certainly is socialist, but that it's authoritarian communist. It sure was under Cuomo. And Hochul's changed nothing because she doesn't know how to. Hochul is about as dumb as they come and a complete stooge of the left-wing Democrat Party. I don't even think she knows she's a stooge. I don't know if he does. He may be a dumb little zealot. We don't need an investigation to know that the NYPD is racist, anti-queer, and a major threat to public safety. You know how many police officers have died in the last decade or two trying to save lives of even some cases of shitheads like you? How is he going to be in charge of the New York City Police Department after having said that? He's in favor, even now, of defunding the police. See that? There's nobody in favor of defunding the police. This is AOC on steroids.
This is another post from him referring to the NYPD as wicked.
New York City, by the way, defunded its police under de Blasio by $1 billion, which was about 30% of its budget. That's never been restored. And New York City is operating on substantially less police than I had or Bloomberg. And as I said, to Adams' credit, he took the increases that happened at the very beginning of his administration, which he inherited from de Blasio, and he's gotten them down to what they were like under de Blasio. But he hasn't been able to crack any further than that. And it isn't because of the police commissioner he has now, as far as I can tell, is doing everything.
Where would you go first?
And he's trying every strategy possible. As far as I can tell, the morale is much better than it used to be. I talk to them all the time when I'm there. And boy, when de Blasio was there, I wish I had recorded it. And they know the condition of the streets better than anybody else, because for them, it's a matter of life and death. You and I can talk about the streets. When the streets are bad, some of them don't come home. So they better know it. It's not an academic exercise for them. It's a matter of life and death. The fire department despises him. Now, if your police department and your fire department despise you, you just shouldn't be a mayor, because those people have to operate at very high morale to keep New Yorkers alive. And there's nothing wrong with them except a lot of them are rugged men. Well, who the hell do you think is going to go into fires? Little half-asses like that? He'd get his beard on fire if he went in. I don't know how many Muslim extremists are firefighters. It used to drive me nuts when they wanted me to fire my firefighters who got into fights. I said, well, who do you think goes into fires? People who get into fights or people who don't?
That is one of your best,
honestly,
wisest comments I've ever heard, Mayor. I'll never forget that.
Malcolm X and I agree on nothing except one thing, and I would make it further. The ruination of the black people, he said, was a liberal Democrat. It's the ruination of America.
Bingo.
Now, right now, we've saved America with Trump. And boy, has he fought back valiantly. And as he put us on the right track, to see him get all those nations to agree to 5%, no Democrat could ever do that. They wouldn't even care about America enough to do it, unless they got a cut of it. In the case of Biden, they would have agreed to 5%. He would have taken 20% of it for him and Hunter and the whole little group of Biden perverts. But our cities are in great jeopardy. And, I thought New York was in better shape than some of the others, and it was. It was. Instead of where Chicago, when it came out of Lori Lighthead, they had a choice, and they picked the Mondami. They picked the jerkiest, most idiotic, left-wing fool for mayor, and he's a disaster. And I said, at least New York, in the case of Adams, picked the best they had available. He wasn't great. Made a lot of mistakes at the beginning. But he was the most, I don't even know if there's a middle anymore, the Democratic Party. He certainly on law and order was the one who knew the most, having been a former cop, and had the best instincts for it. Although not necessarily at first the toughness to fight against everything, because he had to. And then he did, and they indicted him. And that radicalized him, in our sense, which is what happens to a good man when that happens to him. They either fold and give in and become quislings, or they fight back. And he's fought back, and as a result of that, the city is in better shape now than it was or would have been. Now, this guy will be considerably worse than de Blasio, because de Blasio, number one, lied about it a lot. Number two, de Blasio, as Cuomo, de Blasio worked for Cuomo, de Blasio was painfully stupid, really lazy, and a big drug user, allegedly. The last one, based on the cops going to Bratton and saying to Bill Bratton, I don't know why Bill Bratton did this. De Blasio was the mayor. He and definitely his wife, they said, was a major user of marijuana. Who knows what else? And the cops take a surprise test, drug test. They don't tell them when. On one day, they're told to go wherever, and they take a test. You know what the test for marijuana they were using is? They take a little of your hair. Not be hard with me, right? A little bit of the hair, and then they can find the marijuana in there. Now, here's the problem. If I'm sitting in a room and you're smoking marijuana, that thing can stay in my hair for 30 days, even if I shower.
And you don't use.
And I haven't used it. Now, it's one thing if I'm in a room voluntarily and I stay around. It's another thing if I'm a cop and I'm forced to be there because I'm guarding the schmuck. So a very short order, a couple of weeks into the job, they went to see him and they said, Mr. I want to be transferred. I can't be on this detail with this guy. And he exempted them from the rules, which is why Bill, who did a lot of great things, was also a bit of a slimy politician. And believe it or not, I was the politician, supposedly, but he really was. And I never respected him, which made it hard to deal with him. I'm not going to say he didn't do some really good things. He now lies his backside off about how he did everything. I wonder how I got along and reduced crime even more without him. Gee, maybe I had more to do with it. Or how about the broken windows theory? When I first wrote about the broken windows theory, he was probably failing out of grammar school. And he wasn't the brains of the operation. He was the guy that did the glad handing and would go drinking at Elaine's. Eddie Maple was the brains. And when I wanted to have a serious discussion about policing, I would never talk to Bill Bratton. But he was good. He was the right guy in the sense that he put a very good group of people around him. John Miller, John Miller wrote an excellent piece on this whole situation in Israel and Iran related to security in the United States, where we're not thinking about it enough. But I mean, to credit. I consider it a great credit when a man who has weaknesses, and we all do, finds people that make up for those weaknesses. Bratton certainly did that. And his 2.5 years or whatever as police commissioner were highly positive. And he did do something that maybe somebody else wouldn't do. He had the guts to reform it. And somebody that came out of the department, no matter how courageous they were, number one, it would have been harder for them to do it. And second, even if they were completely people of goodwill, they might not have been able to have the vision to do it, because it gets too involved with personal relationships. Now, by the time I got to Bernie, I needed that. I needed to reestablish the morale in the department. So I was enormously fortunate to have 3 really exceptional police commissioners that were there at the right time. Bratton was the guy to reform it, and Howard Safer was the guy to institutionalize it. And then Bernie was the guy to revive it as a police department, not some kind of a silly social worker, community affairs, let's let them do anything they want. Community affairs to me meant reducing crime in the community, not trying to figure out ways to get them out of jail. And Adams has restored a lot of that after de Blasio took it away. And now they want to throw him out of office. And if he gets thrown out of office, he'll be thrown out of office by a communist, Islamic, extremist, aider and abetter, and who knows what else. I haven't seen a single thing he said that makes any sense. That nobody knows the city better than I do. And nobody has changed the city more than I did. Even LaGuardia. I mean, LaGuardia was a great mayor because he got us through the Depression and the war. But he didn't make any great changes in the structure of the city. And he didn't have the opportunity to do it. He did keep it honest. And so did I. But as soon as de Blasio, and so did Mike. That doesn't mean you don't have some corruption here or there and you don't know about it. I'm talking about systemic corruption. When the Democrats take over, they feel entitled to steal. I hope you can see that just in the budgets. Governor DeSantis was on today sympathizing with New York that they're going to probably get another wave of people with this communist taking over. But he didn't point out that the budget of New York State is more than 2 times the budget of Florida State, and we have 3 million less people. Now, we don't provide 3 times more or better service. We probably provide less service. So where's that money going? Do we just waste it, or is it calculated that we do non-bid contracts for incredibly excessive amounts of money, so there's enough money available for kickbacks? Well, it's the latter. And anytime you'd like me to show you, I will. Now, they don't have a city like New York in their jurisdiction. So when you think about New York City spends more money than the entire state of Florida. And my goodness, we got 10 million less people. And boy, are we stealing. When the Democrats are in charge, it's time for people to get rich. And they do. Even Adams, who I don't think was involved in it himself, but the people around him were putting out contracts for homelessness first, and for the aliens second, that were 2 and 3 times the amount in other states. Hochul does that also. It's all of the kickback money that we're used to, the politicians, the lobbyists, the companies. We're a crooked Democrat state. Most of the old Democrat states and cities are crooked. Philadelphia, Chicago, Detroit. It's an exception when they're not. And in New York, the exception is when there's a Republican mayor. Look, I don't know if you see Governor DeSantis on.
You want to hear a few of his comments?
Well, he's my governor now, but boy, I wish he would switch to New York. Florida doesn't need him anymore. Between Bush and Scott and him, boy, what a job.
Okay, we've got a big state. We got 23 plus million people. I mean, just 5 or 6 years ago, we had like 21 million people. We've got 3 or 4 million more people than New York State does now. And they were the most populous state for a large part of American history. But then even, in the last 30 years, they were more than us. And so, and I'm not like running around like begging businesses to move. Most of them move on their own because they think Florida's got a lot to offer, and we do. But the reality is, and look, this is not the actual election; it's the primary. But when you win the Democratic primary in a 6-1, 7-1, 8-1 Democrat city, you have a great chance, obviously, to win. And people say, but all this stuff matters to Florida because when Chicago goes south, then people. All of a sudden, you see all these people showing up in Naples. When New York City, and that during de Blasio, a lot of people got out. And that's why Palm Beach and Miami, and you see all this stuff. So there is an impact. And so I watch these things because I do know it will affect the state of Florida. Not that I'm asking for it to, or not that we're wanting it to, but when you have a candidate who wants to abolish the NYPD, who says, well, we're not going to send police into these high crime areas. We're going to send social workers. That ain't going to end well. I'm just telling.
That's a governor. I thought you might want to see a governor before we end the show. Because if you go to a Democrat state, it's hard to see a governor. You might see Fatso in Illinois, or Murphy in New Jersey is the worst governor in America, or a dumb skull in New York, or
Minnesota, Tampa. You forgot our favorite.
Witless
in Michigan with her fake kidnapping story. I was the first one to call that fake. Tim Walz. Tampon Tim.
Tampon Tim.
I don't know if he's here in China today.
Red China
his schedule. Yeah. China.
Or how about that handsome, unbelievably suave, debonair Governor Newcomb?
Oh,
who
Newcomb,
who was at cocktail parties while for a second time Los Angeles was burning.
I was going to say, how many times? Multiple times in 1 year. This guy's
one more, and there won't be any Los Angeles.
Right. Speaking of fire departments, that's the last guy I'd call if my house was on fire.
This is a guy who, together with his mayor, can't figure out how to put water in the fire hydrants.
Right.
You see, those are fire hydrants. And he thought they were mile markers. That was his reason. He said, well, we didn't fill them up because we do have a water shortage. But if we had known, we would have filled them up. I always thought they marked out like they were put there by the excavators.
Right.
Just, they go back to ancient New York and we're a new city. And we just put them out there as excavators. And people said, well, didn't you ever look at the pictures of New York and the kids use it in the summer for water? Oh, he said, well, I thought occasionally they'd fix one up with water. He said, you didn't think it had anything to do with firefighting? What? Oh, what's firefighting? We don't let fires. We don't fight. We just let the forest burn down.
Here is Governor Newsom to Tom Homan.
Do you think he brings a hairdresser with him everywhere?
Creating is exhausting. So Tom, arrest me. Let's go. Be so clear, but that kind of bloviating is exhausting. So Tom, arrest me. Let's go. Be so clear, but
I'd like him to take a go with Tom Homan.
Yeah, that's not fair.
Backyard.
That's not fair.
Just a little something in the backyard, big boy, with Tom Homan.
Can you imagine? I couldn't. It's too ugly to.
Yeah, the jaw would be over here. The lion jaw would be over here.
Tom's too much of a man to even engage in such a one-sided battle. Tom would look at me like, "No, you guys, come on."
Tom would have to do what I did with that guy a few years ago with my last encounter, and I said, "Hit me," and he said, "Why?" I said, "Because I'm going to kick the shit out of you, and I need a reason to do it." I said, I'm not gonna hit you first. Just hit me.
Yeah.
And when he did that, he got so scared. He never had anybody confront him like that.
Right.
This guy incorrectly thought I had prosecuted him.
Oh, that's right. I know this story.
And he harassed me for a year. And it was a bit of a sad case. His son had committed suicide because he went to jail for tax evasion.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if his son committed suicide for that reason. Yeah. But those are the facts.
Yeah.
A lot of people who knew him said he was wacky anyway. But all of a sudden he comes up to me on the street in very, very quiet Bridgehampton. And I'm standing there with Judas. And he says to me, I always wanted to meet you. Well, okay, that's good. Yeah. And he said, I wanted to meet you. And we start walking across the street now. I wanted to meet you because the last time I met you was in an elevator and you were surrounded by your goons. So I knew now this wasn't going to be good. And he said, you don't have your goons around right now. I said, what are you talking about? He said, you put me in jail falsely. And I said, when did I do that? Because I didn't remember him. And there were cases I handled directly. There are cases I handled sort of in a bigger, and some I didn't know about. They were just 5,000 cases. So maybe I missed him. But he told me he was some kind of a Hollywood producer and filmmaker. Of course, immediately he's nuts. And I said, when'd you go to jail? He said, 1982. I said, I wasn't U.S. attorney in 1982. There, you're a liar too. And then Judas tries to tell him, no, I know, no. He said, I'm going to kick the shit out of you. I said, okay, let's get on the other side of the street. I said, here I am. Kick the shit out of me. He said, what? Hit me. What? I said, look, I've just got to warn you, though. I'm going to let you hit me once. And then they're going to find you at the other end of the block in a garbage can where I'm going to put you after I beat the shit out of you. He never expected that.
I wish I was there for that
one. And then the police finally came over, and he had the gall to say I threatened him. And then, of course, I had witnesses. I had like 4 witnesses. They said, we never saw anything like that before. Mayor Giuliani told him to hit him.
Oh, man, I wish we had that on.
So he walked away. He said, I'm going to go. And the cop said, should we arrest him? I said, nah, let him go. And I went over to the store I was going in. He went to the store he was going to go in. I spent a little time in the store. The cops disappeared. And when I come out, he's out there again. This time he's harassing me by calling me names. And at that point, my security did show up. And they said, we got to have him arrested because we don't even know who he is. We got to get his picture and his whatever. And we finally did arrest him. And his case lasted for about a year, and then I dropped it. But that was my last.
Oh, man, I miss.
So that's what I would do if I were Tom Homan. I would tell Pretty Boy to, take a shot.
Yeah.
And then
can you imagine?
Readjust his face for him.
Can you?
It would be like plastic surgery. He gets it all the time. It wouldn't be that bad.
He is the most.
But, I think if you've had plastic surgery, those things come off really fast. Like he could lose his nose. Not just break it, but lose it. It would go down on the floor. It's like if you touched Pelosi on the face at all, it would completely readjust it. Because Pelosi, I am told, now this is a very deeply held secret. She doesn't have a single natural body part on her face. It's all been invented somewhere in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna get deeply involved in the mayor's race, and
here's another one from our.
We already had someone suggest, I think it was Finity on Newsmax, that maybe we should get everybody behind Adams. See if we can talk. We can talk the other candidates into supporting him.
I think Cuomo, if he wants to do the right thing, he should run.
Well, Cuomo, you think Cuomo should run? No, I don't think so.
To peel off.
I think Cuomo would take votes from Adams and from Sliwa.
You don't think so?
No, I think.
Oh, you think you would? You would take from those two?
I think the Cuomo vote. Well, I think more naturally the Cuomo vote goes to Adams. But as between.
You need a one-on-one matchup. You need one person that can beat Mamdani.
One-on-one matchup between Sliwa and Mamdani, the Cuomo vote would go to Sliwa or stay home. But if it were Adams, more of it would go to Adams and less would stay home because they're Democrats. So in Adams, in Sliwa's case, they have to overcome being Democrats. And so I think it would be, and I'm just trying to think in a very cold and calculating way, given the fact that the city is, 8 out of 10 Democrat.
Right.
A Democrat's going to have a better chance of beating him than a Republican.
Right.
Of course, I'd rather have a Republican beat him.
Right.
But this is no longer about party. This is about whether the damn city survives.
Right. Right. And I think, I know one name that. So I know people are bandying about different options and how to get someone off or this person off. Does this help? Could it benefit having a strong Curtis?
No,
but I want to take out Curtis's name. I don't want to.
It would help if Curtis supported Adams.
You think so? Yeah, I was going to ask which way would make more sense.
Well, I'd be willing to look at polls.
Curtis out, support Adams, or Adams out and support Curtis?
I think Finity is right. I think his analysis is correct, and he's a Republican too, and I think he prefers the other way around. But I would take a look at polls to see. You got to make this choice in a very cold and calculating way because it's too damn important.
Yeah, this is serious.
Who would pick up more of the other guy's vote? I have no doubt that Adams would get more of Cuomo's vote than Curtis because of the Republican-Democrat barrier.
Yeah.
But as to Adams or Sliwa, which way does the vote transfer more? The natural instinct would be because the city's so Democrat that it would work better from Sliwa to Adams.
Yeah. And the election results, the last election.
Yeah. However, people have changed a lot.
Yeah.
And a really good poll, which wouldn't be done for the purpose of influencing anybody. And I would say it would be completely private so that nobody fools around with it. You'd ask the pollster, this has got to be honest as hell. And you test out if Curtis dropped out, where would his vote go? If Adams dropped out, where would his vote go? And where would the Cuomo vote go? You can do that. you know, a lot of polls are off by a little bit to please a candidate or a party.
Right.
So this one is not for the purpose of pleasing anybody. This one is to make maybe a decision as to whether New York City is going to survive. So everybody would have to be willing to get and any pollster is capable of doing that.
Yeah.
And some of them aren't capable of selling out, but a lot of them are.
Right. It's usually the other way. Yeah.
That doesn't mean they can't, if you tell them, if you tell them, I want a real one, I need a real one.
Right.
The best polls they do are issue polls, because you don't have to play with somebody's ego with an issue poll. I always found that's what they were most valuable about. They could tell you what was really on people's mind, and then you'd have to back that up. You'd have to back that up with interviews.
Sure.
Because you just don't want a percentage. You want a degree of emotion.
Right.
You want to hear people. That's why I would spend a lot of time out on the street. I would want to listen to what people were coming up to me with. Let's say.
Is that what you did when you ran?
Yeah. Let's say I did it all the time when I was in office. Let's say 60% of the city is in favor of pro-choice. And only 50% of the city is in favor of choice in education, vouchers, right?
Yep.
But the 50% in favor of vouchers are coming up to you all the time. And the 60% in favor of abortion, when you ask them, they're in favor of abortion, but it doesn't motivate their life. They're not going to go out of their way to come up to you.
Right.
So really, and even if the poll tells you one's more intense than the other, it's human action that tells you more. And that's why I always told Trump that his rallies were so great a weapon, because his rallies weren't just saying to somebody at home, are you enthusiastic or very enthusiastic for the candidate? People may not even know the difference between enthusiastic and very enthusiastic. They don't have to tell you they're very enthusiastic when they take 5 hours out of the day and stand in 90-degree heat to listen to Donald Trump.
That's a very good point, Mayor. And
so here's what I do think, Ted. I do think that Mondami's support is very thin.
Right.
Remember, de Blasio, we'll go back and look. De Blasio had turnouts where he won that were ridiculous. I don't know. I think it was like 30% of the city. The people against him didn't show up because they didn't think their vote would count. But if you put a real candidate against him, like Adams supporting Sliwa or Sliwa supporting Adams, you might be able to do it.
Bingo. And I can't imagine anyone that's currently supporting Sliwa, right? That you wouldn't see much crossover with Mamdani, but maybe with Adams you'll see a little bit, right? Because they share the Democrat Party. That's your point, Mayor. So
what did Sliwa get last time?
Yeah, let's look. I believe he got smoked by Adams.
Yeah, but what did he get? Because you could consider that sort of a base. I thought about 30%.
I want to say something like that.
Maybe 32.
That would have been 2021, right?
He did better than the prior Republican.
Sliwa got 27%.
He didn't even hit 30.
Adams got 66.
Wow.
So that's tough. That's look, Curtis, he contributed a lot to the city right through the Guardian Angels, and
27%.
27%. So
now Trump got more of the city than that.
Eric Adams got about 67%, 66.99% technically, which is 67. So 2/3 of the vote. Curtis, 27%. He won Staten Island. That's about it. So that's a real question. And with Adams, the question is, do New Yorkers trust him? I mean,
that shows the deterioration in New York. You could sort of consider the base vote in New York about 32. That was pretty solid, a pretty solid 32%.
Yeah.
The lowest vote I ever got was 48. And the highest was 59. But that was a long time ago.
Well, the coalitions are obviously different. The makeup of New York City.
Well, it's heavy a Democrat now, and it's much crazy a Democrat.
And the one thing though, Mayor, hasn't it always been a city of legal immigrants? So this idea that all of a sudden, I mean, New York's so that's I don't think when they talk about the city changing, that's not something that's changed, right? You've always been a city that has welcomed immigration.
Absolutely true, but not this kind of immigrant.
Exactly.
No city has had that. We had.
I'm talking legal immigration, by the way.
We had legal immigration, and we had illegal immigration of people that snuck in, but they had to sneak in, which is a control.
Oh yeah. We invited them.
Immigration we've had for the last 4 years just walked in.
No, they were invited.
And they were invited and escorted.
And given cards.
Yeah.
Nice hotel rooms.
And a credit card.
And hotel rooms.
It's unheard of.
So we shouldn't be surprised
and
by
not
this.
Expected to vote, not expected to work, but expected to vote. Well, let's talk a little bit about how the anti-Trump conspiracy is alive and well. The report that Fordo can be reopened in 2 to 3 months is from the same group of people that produced the Ukrainian report. That guy was on the National Security Council. He was on it as Biden's representative first, and then hidden away as a Democrat plant for all of the years of Trump. The report is inherently stupid. I'm not even sure you'll be able to get in the place in 2 to 3 weeks. It was hit with 7 or 14 30,000-pound bombs. So what do you think that does? It destroys the place. But I'd really like to take a better look at the intelligence photos, because here's one of the things be interesting to know. There's one report that they took down half the mountain, and there's the other report they took down the whole mountain, which means the half or the whole mountain is now sitting on the access to the tunnels. You're going to get that gone in 2 to 3 months? In a country that can't deliver groceries? I mean, this is a country that's a disaster. It's similar in a way to a communist country, because the Ayatollah and the mullahs run it for the purpose not of taking care of their people, but of supporting terrorism, because their goal is to be an empire. The people of Iran mean nothing to them. They're a support for a goal. And the goal is to be, to fulfill Muhammad's wish of a Muslim world, which is why they've named themselves the Islamic Republic of Iran. And they were on their way to it until Donald J. Trump came along. When he came into office, they had, as I described to you many times, a hegemony. They had a part of an empire stitched together in a bit of a strange way, but stitched together nonetheless. They had Iran. For the longest time, they had Iraq. And then once we straightened it out a bit with Trump, they ended up with about half of Iraq. They had all of Syria on their side. They had all of Lebanon on their side through the Hezbollah. They had Gaza through Hamas, who they directed. They had Yemen. And they had a good working relationship with Turkey, because they had a common enemy, the Kurds. They had developed a very good working relationship with China and Russia. Now you have the makings of a world war. I think I described any number of times that to have a world war, you need an axis That's what caused the First World War that never should have happened, and the Second World War that became inevitable. It could have been a one country war against the other if people hadn't all lined up. But then when a war takes place, it becomes like internal combustion. And so Japan attacks America, and America goes to war against Germany. And they're all lined up. So you even see it now, although it's posturing with Putin saying, "Oh, I'm gonna give Iran bombs." Well, he gives Iran bombs, and we have a world war. That's the danger of these alliances. But on the other hand, they're necessary to defend yourself. So you trigger a world war by attacking Poland. If Russia attacks Poland, every nation that you see there in NATO, unless they want to break the treaty, goes to war against Russia. And then China would have to come in to help Russia. North Korea would have to come in to help Russia. I think they prefer if Venezuela stayed out. And I think they'd prefer if North Korea stayed out, because North Korea did a better job of killing the Russians than the Ukrainians. Maybe we should encourage North Korea for a war with Russia and China. We should encourage that North Korea be in the war, because they'd end up killing them instead of us.
Right.
So that's the danger that we have. Now, let me explain to you that the report is a report where they rate it. They rate the percentage of accuracy. And this has the lowest percentage of accuracy. It's rated as low confidence. Now, explain to me, if you have decent motives and your motive is not to hurt Trump, why you would leak that report? It doesn't have to be leaked. It's a report of low confidence. It's going to hurt your country to leak it, because it's going to look like your country failed. And since it's low confidence, it may very well turn out to be untrue in the long run. It's like somebody had a report that somebody has cancer, but the diagnosis is a very low confidence. And then it ends by saying it's just as possible that they don't. You might tell the person, but you don't want everybody to know that yet. It may be unnecessary. You only would put that out. Are you following me? You'd only put that out if you hate your country and you want to hurt your country and you hate the guy running it. And particularly since he was so enthusiastic about it. And of course, if you're the press, they're reporting it as if this were a revelation from Moses or Jesus Christ. And really, it's a revelation from a ratty, shitty little rat in the National Security Council, working for Tulsi Gabbard, who she never got. And I say we put them all on a polygraph machine. And we find them and we kick them out by the ass and prosecute them and put them in jail. And I volunteer to do it. I guarantee you I'll catch him. I knew the other guy in 2 days. He was in my Ukrainian investigation, Eric Chiarella. It took the press months to catch up on that. I could figure him out without these, because I had Ukrainians who were willing to testify against him, who said he conducted a meeting in January of 2017, in which, in January of 2016, encouraging them to get dirt on Manafort, Eric, and Trump in Ukraine. Because he said there's a lot of connection between Ukraine and Russia. Maybe you can pick up stuff about Russia and Ukraine. And they said, well, because of the party of regents, maybe we can't. And then there was like a Watergate-style looting of the party of regents. There was an absolutely phony book that was made up in which people supposedly initialed records. They took bribes. Now, I've done a lot of bribery cases. I never saw people having to sign for the bribe. I mean, that anybody would believe that is ridiculous. And then it turned out when you started checking the signatures were all phony. But Hillary paid for it and she got it. That's what you're dealing with here. This is the same group that came forward and said that Trump and I were dealing with the Russians when I got the hard drive. 51 intelligence experts, some of the most famous and the most frequently appearing on the left-wing communist Sunday shows. And some of them being paid a fortune by them now. All of them now without security clearance, with all of those shows crying. They're lucky they're not in jail. They should be in jail. So, I don't know. I would say use your common sense. $14,000, 30,000-pound bombs. You see the pictures. You see Iran asking for a ceasefire. No mas, no mas, no mas, because the Ayatollah is hiding somewhere. Someone told him there are no virgins for him. So the old man is all upset. And maybe he's too old to take advantage. So he figures maybe it's better I live. And, he's got a good record for Muhammad, though. I mean, he got a good case to be in paradise with Muhammad. He's killed about as many people as Muhammad did. Somebody's got to be honest about the religion. Otherwise, we're going to be afflicted with this into our children and grandchildren's generation. This religion has to be modified. I think because in its pure form, it doesn't belong in a civilized world. If you read the whole Quran and you read it honestly, it exhorts you to mass murder of Jews and Christians. And when you see the people who do it, it's not that they're making it up. It's that they're reading it and following it. And there are some Muslims that say you read that out. I'm okay with that. But read it out. And it's hard to read out because it's interspersed all throughout the Quran. The Quran was organized with this is a strange way to do it. I don't know if it's the longest chapter first or the shortest chapter first. I think it's the shortest chapter first. But that takes you over a 40-year span. So here you're talking to young Muhammad, who was an idealist and thought the Jews and the Christians were all brothers of his. And then you're talking to the old killer Muhammad, who had been rejected by everybody, had been made fun of as an epileptic, and was a bitter, homicidal old man. And he came up with the idea of converting by conquering. And then added the idea of paying tribute. So he became like an organized criminal. So now that's history. That's called the truth. If you can handle it, great. If you can't, please don't try to influence other people. So I would say that let's wait until all the evidence is in. I think you're going to find that their program was set back to the tune of at least $1 trillion. No matter how long it takes for them to rebuild, they don't have the money to do it. They may very well not have the scientists to do it. And if there are a couple missing, I really doubt that the ceasefire is going to stop the Mossad. Generally, ceasefires don't apply to intelligence services. I think if they know that there's an Iranian scientist and they're screwing around and nobody else will pay attention to it, they will. Well, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. U.S. Army Major Scott Smiley paid a high price serving our nation. Scott was leading his platoon in Iraq when a blast sent shrapnel through his eyes, leaving him blind and temporarily paralyzed. Scott would become the first blind active duty military officer before medically retiring years later. Thanks to friends like you, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation gave Scott and his family a mortgage-free, specially adapted smart home. Show your support for America's heroes now. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org.
Are you ready for some action?
I'm ready for action.
Get the Elite TV plan only through the portal. 218 channels, and it's only $69.95 a month,
Wow.
including your free portal.
That's cheaper than everyone else.
Your favorite sports, movies, news,
Wow.
even daytime dramas. We're talking about ESPN, OAN, Newsmax, channels you can't get anymore in certain areas.
Compared to the competition, this is a way better deal.
Endless selection. Not to mention all the free music channels. There's over 700 premium and classic movies all ready to go.
Wow.
Plus, they got catch-up TV that allows you to go back and watch what you've missed or want to watch again. Cut your cable in half and get twice as much for free.
Way more channels for half the cost.
After the first year, the subscription then drops to $57.95 monthly,
Wow.
where you change or upgrade anytime. Go to QUXNow.com and get yours today. Use promo code RUDY. Act fast. These deals are selling out.
Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep green, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because they like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans, no Robusto, all Arabica. They're going to go into the roaster and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee. This is Rudy Giuliani back with America's Mayor Live. And let's talk a little about the extraordinary appearance of Donald Trump today at NATO. Remember back just a short while ago to the beginning of the administration and all of the hysterical Democrats and our anti-American traitor press? Oh my God, he's going to ruin NATO. He's going to destroy NATO. NATO's going to be gone. NATO now has the prospect of having 3 times the budget it ever had under any of the feckless Democrats. And we're going to have like real members, not welfare members. The Democrats treated NATO like they treat the minority population. They paid them off and tried to get them to be dependent. Of course, great people don't do that. An awful lot of the minorities fought them off. An awful lot of them, like Malcolm X, came to the conclusion that the biggest problem for Black Americans was the white liberal. Well, some of these people, like the Secretary General right there, he's leading the effort with Trump for 5%. That lady that you see right there is the Prime Minister of Italy. She's right there. And everybody is there now except one. España, the one that spends the most time visiting with Red China and with Russia.
Well,
because the guys are straight out and out communists, and the poor country is being run by a communist.
well, let's hear from the NATO chief
There's
this morning.
There's the most solid American of all.
For too long, one ally, the United States, carried too much of the burden of that commitment. And that changes today. President Trump, dear Donald, you made this change possible. Your leadership on this has already produced $1 trillion in extra spending from European allies since 2016. And the decisions today will produce trillions more for our common defense to make us stronger and fairer by equalizing spending between America and America's allies.
Well, I didn't say it. That's a European. And he's been doing this for 4 months, working with Trump. Nobody would report on him. I did.
That's right. If you were watching the show, you knew about
They think if they don't report it, it's not going to happen. Well, that's the big mistake they make. And now, more people are starting to get their news from people like me than them. Not me, but people like me. People who don't have a corrupt bone in their body. Nobody's going to pay me to say what they want to say. I'm going to tell you what I think is right. I work really hard on trying to figure it out. Spent a lot of time today trying to figure out what's going on with that facility. It took a while to find the end of the report. The report cancels itself out. Think about this. I mean, if you do what they don't do, use your own brain and logic. Since they are disciples of a vicious, horrible ideology, communism, they don't think any longer. Communism thinks for them. But here's what the report says. It says that they're going to be able to get back in 2 to 3 months. But that's an analysis in which they have very low confidence. Of course, I already raised the question, why would you put it out? And why would you leak it illegally? At the very end, it says, it's quite possible they did very significant damage. It could take years. But that we have low confidence in that also. So here's the point. They don't have confidence in anything because they don't know what they're talking about. Now, if you take a look at the pictures and you talk to the pilots who were there, they're the only ones going to be available right now. They tell you we hit every target. We could see the damage. Again, I'd like an answer to, did it take half or the entire mountain down? And I rely on our Air Force anytime over these crackpots. So let's listen to Trump.
So this is President Trump on Spain, who apparently isn't on board with the new 5%
The only country.
commitment.
Thank you, Mr. President. A question on Spain. Are you satisfied with today?
Oh, I think Spain's terrible what they've done. No, I do. They're the only country that won't pay the full up. They want to stay at 2%. I think it's terrible. And, they're doing very well. The economy is very well. And that economy could be blown right out of the water with something bad happening. Spain is the only country that, are you from Spain?
Yeah.
Good, congratulations. You're the only country that is not paying. I don't know what the problem is. I think it's too bad.
They're communists.
So we'll make it up. You know what we're going to do? We're negotiating with Spain on a trade deal. We're going to make them pay twice as much. And I'm actually serious about that. We're going to make Spain. I like Spain. I have so many people from Spain that it's a great place and they're great people. But Spain is the only country out of all of the countries that refuses to pay. And
Well, it's because it's a communist country. The leadership, not the country. The country is actually by nature a fairly conservative country. but that's changed over the years a bit as Europe has changed, but not as much as, let's say, England or France or Germany. But the present government, and they've been going in the direction of left wing. This left wing goes over, to the communist side. And if you look at the amount of time that he spends in Russia, the prime minister spends in Russia and in China, that's where he's taken his marching orders. Now, yes, Trump could ruin their economy. The rest of Europe could really destroy their economy. And I would think if I were Poland or Hungary or even Italy or France, or I'm paying the 5% and they're not, I'd kick them in the you-know-what. I don't know how much leeway you have within the EU, but you might be able to get the EU to penalize them. Why should everybody be paying for Spain? It's the same objection Trump had. Why should I be paying for all of you when you can pay? Now think about that. That's not just a fiscal decision. That makes it a much more vital organization. He just turned it into a real dangerous fighting force. You put all those budgets together, and now China doesn't have the biggest military budget in the world. NATO does. Got it? The EU as a group is the third biggest economy in the world. US 1, China 2, EU 3. Now you put US and EU together, China goes back to being halfway or less to us. And then you get them to start spending money on the military, takes a lot of burden off us. And we can spend our money on even more sophisticated methods of defense. And as we get into AI, we're going to have to do that. And we've never had a president that thought about these things the way he does. His decisions have levels of complexity that you have to analyze rather than just throwing crap at them. Now, some of them I will grant you are not smart enough to figure it out. But the ones who are just put it aside because they hate him or they're committed to communism. Shall we listen to some of this?
Yep, here's a lighthearted moment from the conference.
Papers on it, Marco? Maybe we're going to do papers. I don't even know if you need them. They're not going to be fighting each other. They've had it. They've had a big fight, like two kids in a schoolyard. They fight like hell. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2-3 minutes. Then it's easier to stop them.
And then Daddy has to sometimes do strong language.
You have to use strong language. Every once in a while, you have to use a certain word.
I think we have to join the others.
I got the feeling listening to the president, I don't think you have that. Listening, he wanted to stay longer. Usually he likes to get out of these places, but he's a very friendly guy. And all of a sudden now they're all friends. He was at war with them a month ago.
Here's the president's.
The biggest supporter on hitting back Iran was Germany. Wow. The guy who said he was going to fight Trump to the tooth and nail, Merz. He was his biggest supporter.
Sky News. Mark Rutte, the NATO chief, who is your friend, he called you daddy earlier. Do you regard your NATO allies as kind of children?
No, he likes me. I think he likes me. If he doesn't, I'll let you know. I'll come back and I'll hit him hard, okay? No, he did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy.
Do you regard your NATO allies, though, as kind of like children, and they're obviously listening to you and they're spending more, and you're obviously appreciative of that, but do you hope that actually they're going to be able to defend themselves, defend Europe on their own without...
I think they need help a little bit at the beginning. And
from Sky News.
They don't have to defend Europe on their own. If they carry their weight, we'll defend Europe with them. And they'll defend America with us. That's the whole purpose of it. But you're not defending Europe if you're not putting your fair share in. You're a freeloader riding on someone else.
Yeah.
And when you do that, it's not a very well motivated military organization. That's the real problem is the money, and the failure to put the money in demonstrated the lack of commitment. And it spilled over into restrictions that our crooked and somewhat traitorous Democrats would sometimes accept. Like certain countries would contribute troops, but they wouldn't fight. You know what that does to the morale of a fighting force? When half the soldiers won't fight? You know what it does to their morale? I mean, that's why I guess they had those queens come in. What do they call them? Those weird perverted queens? When they have the sessions with the perverts?
Right. I know what you're talking about.
They're all dressed up like clowns and they got the lipstick on their head and
drag show.
Yeah, drag queens. That's what we have. We have to have an equal number of drag queens in the military. And we have to pay for transgender surgery. That costs $400,000. You know, if I go into the military, right? And they do the test, and it turns out that I'm going to need a complex operation, right? Yep. Let's say prostate operation or something, which actually is only about 20 or 30 grand, I think. They won't take you. I don't want to spend the money on it.
Yeah.
Why should they take you when you're a burden? We were at a point where if you came into the military and you said, I was a man, but I feel like a woman and I want to change, Biden and Tampon Tim, Communist Tim and all, they all supported paying for it.
Right.
Tampon Tim has spent a fortune on taking off people's penises. Yeah. He's a mutilator in chief. Now, what the hell is the military doing paying for sex change operations? You want to do a sex change, go do it. If you can, if the law lets you do it. A lot of states have laws against mutilation. But if the law of your state allows it and you want to pay for it, it's up to you. But the military shouldn't be burdened with that. And then you have to have a few realities here. I'm sorry, drag queens don't make good first sergeants. I don't know. I don't see a group of drag queens taking a hill like a group of Marines. What do you think? Nor do I ever remember a drag queen coming in during a fire and saving me. There was some idiot politician who said, it's very comforting if you're in a fire, if somebody of your own race or gender comes in to take you. Not if they can't carry you, it isn't.
Right.
People look for all kinds of explanations for why people liked it. Did anybody ever think there are a couple of reasons, like they're stupid? Or they're poorly educated? Or they're mentally out of it? Some of them, you look at them, you can tell by the way they're dressed. They put their clothes on backwards. And a lot of them don't shower. They don't. Right. Don't laugh at me. They don't shower. So 6 million federal student loans are 90 days or more past due. That has to be a result of Biden scamming them into thinking it was going to
pay them back.
That was a horrible thing that he did to those. Of course, they should pay their loans back, but times are tough. And to give them false they should take the money from Biden.
Yeah, he's got plenty of money from overseas.
That came from China. Yeah, that they have in the bank accounts that Zelensky won't give up.
And I know our student loan debt is big, but
if Zelensky wants more money for Ukraine, we should go take it out of Biden's account.
Well,
I'm going to tell Trump that. I'm going to say the next time Zelensky wants more money, tell him to give you the key to the offshore accounts that his prosecutors know about.
Well, you got to get the password from Hunter first.
Yeah, but we can blow it open if we have.
Yeah. We got to find Hunter too. Yeah.
I mean, I know.
Where's Hunter?
This doesn't come from me. This comes from his prosecutors who told me that they have. And if we ever get those offshore accounts, they tell me, you can be very surprised that it goes beyond Biden.
Well, wouldn't be surprised, right? I'd expect it.
Of course. Of course.
So, Mayor, what else is happening in the news today? I know, obviously our focus has been on the president and his visit, Israel and Iran, and of course, New York.
As I think you know, the Supreme Court approved, at least temporarily, meaning they're not going to temporarily block 6-3, that we can deport an illegal to a third country. We don't have to, if the country that he comes from won't take him, we can get a country to take him, we can do that. They have no right to necessarily go back to their country if their country doesn't want them. So that's important, right? So originally the LA raids, now you should know that the LA raids were done because of the disproportionately high number of criminals among the illegals in California. And a large number of them were folded into some of the union jobs. So when you say, well, why did they go to these places where they were working? Because the intelligence showed that a lot of the criminals were working there. And that was a place to find them. And it turned out, when they made the arrests, that a large percentage of the people, we've shown you their pictures, the government has, were criminals. So when the mayor who'd rather be in Uganda than fight the fires in Los Angeles said this was going after the non-criminal aliens who are just criminal because they come in criminally, but they don't commit crimes here, she was wrong, as usual. And in going after the ones who are dangerous criminals, they're going to be mixed in with the others, and you're necessarily going to pick up some of them. Then the question becomes, what do you do with them? Suppose you do a raid and you pick up 5 rapists and 10 of their relatives who haven't committed any crimes. Well, the rapists you send back, well, you can't send anybody back. But I mean, theoretically, most people would say, send the rapists back. What do you do with the others? They're here legally. Maybe they're working or going to school. What do you do with them? You send them back? Send them back to where they are in Los Angeles, or send them out? The law says they go out. A certain degree of sensitivity, emotion says, well, the only thing they seem to have done wrong is come in here because they wanted a job, and they are working, and doesn't assure because they're working that they're not criminals either, you know. So that's a tough question. I agree that's a tough question. But we're not even fighting that question yet, and we got about 3 or 4 million to go before we have to fight that question. And I see both sides of that one. There's no side to, you come in here illegally and you break the law, out. Out right away, quickly, summarily, have a summary trial, out. And given the dangerous level of our illegal aliens, we might be at a stage where anybody we catch, we throw out, and you got to take your chances. You don't get caught. I mean, once we have you, it seems strange that if you're here illegally, we let you go back. It seems to me like you're just unlucky and you got to go. I mean, you created the problem ultimately, right? What do you think, Ted? I know you have a lot of sympathy on this issue, maybe even more than I do. So, and I know a lot of people do, and a lot don't. So it's
in terms of who should be allowed to stay, or
what I'm saying is, I think they're right about their emphasis. I had the same emphasis, which is we have so many damn criminals here.
Limited resources.
We got to put our focus on catching the criminals.
Right.
We can't be worried about who's in the back of the restaurant or who's at a sewing shop or whatever. However, if we do find out that criminals are using those jobs as a cover, which they are in some cases,
many cases, yeah,
and we got to catch the criminals. We got to go do a raid there. So now we do a raid of 100 people in the garment area of a city, and we come up with 40 that are criminals and 60 that have no record as far as we know. Now, we can't check their record back in Venezuela, and we can't check their record back in wherever you pick it. I mean, most places. So we're going on their word, and they haven't committed any crimes in the 2 or 3 years they're here. Now we have them. Do we send them back to our country? I mean, we effectuate their illegal entry?
Right.
Well, since we have them, we throw them out. They don't belong here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the facts as presented, under the current situation, what we've been facing the past 4 years, they are subjected to removal. Now, that doesn't mean we can't acknowledge the idea that America is a country made up of immigrants, right?
But
legal
it's made
immigrants.
up of, this country was never intended to be made up of illegal immigrants.
Exactly.
Country was intended to be made up of people who come here, who can be vetted, so that they're good people who aren't going to cause trouble for us.
Right.
I mean, this idea of illegal immigration is a new one.
Right.
All those people that came over to Ellis Island, that's why Ellis Island is there. Ellis Island is to stop them from coming in until you know who they are.
Right. And
so you can't use Ellis Island as an example of this. These are people who avoided Ellis Island, who swam around it.
And shame on the Democrat Party and these politicians. They've ruined it. And they're the ones telling people, come on in, disrespect our laws. And so at some point, even acknowledging that this is going to be a hardship on people, at the end of the day, life can be unfair and all that stuff. And they got to go.
If it's going to be unfair, who should it be unfair to? The people who follow the rules or the people who didn't?
Right. And the idea that these people are all every single one of them are helpless victims that can't do anything for themselves is nonsense.
Well, God, they do a lot for themselves. They get them across thousands and thousands of miles.
I mean, if I were to sneak off,
and then when they get here, they seem to disproportionately like to abuse children.
Right. If I were to sneak off to France, not tell anyone over there, and just start doing stuff, whether it's working in the back of a kitchen or protesting in the streets, I would know at any point if they were to catch me, I'd be subjected to immediate removal, whether that happens the first week I'm there or 10 years later. You're living with that risk. We're not shooting people in the street. We're removing them and paying for their way back.
I think the right way to do it, and I'm open to. This is one where I'm open to listening to your argument on the other side. I'm not open to listening to your argument on anybody who committed a crime. They go out, gone. And it should be a very, very summary process. They should not be allowed to have the same rights that somebody who's an American citizen has. We should be able to have a fairly summary trial, and based on a civil burden level of proof, throw them out. Now, if you haven't committed a crime and we catch you, I think largely we have to send you back unless there are extenuating circumstances.
Where does the concept of, I know with property law, the idea of, is it adverse possession?
Yeah, adverse possession
after a certain number of years.
If there's a place that's abandoned and you take it over, and I've forgotten if it's 5 years or 10 years.
I thought it was like 20. It might be 20 something.
Yeah, some places it's only 5.
Okay.
Some places it's 10.
Yeah.
It's an old English concept.
Yeah.
You then own it. If nobody's come along and claimed it in whatever period of time they pick up. So you have somebody that's here for 20 years, And they haven't done anything wrong.
Let's make it tougher. Let's make this harder for ourselves. They've been a objectively contributing member of society.
You make an exception. Then you make it an exception. I mean, the law exists to make exceptions. The law is not applied like
and at that
like
point,
a computer.
Yeah.
In fact, when they first started in England, they started with the King's Court. And the King's Court applied the rules rigidly. So let's say this was in front of the King's Court. Originally, it was the king who decided. And then he appointed judges to do it. And they were called the King's Judges, His Majesty's Court. And you go before His Majesty's Court. And His Majesty's Court says, you came in illegally, that's the letter of the law, you got to go out. Because sometimes the law would be very rigid, over time they established a court where you could go to the Chancellor of England and you could plead your case to equity, to fairness. You could say, see how terrible this is? I did come in illegally, but since then I've been here 20 years. I brought up 3 kids. They're all wonderful. I contributed. I did. And the Chancellor could make an exception for you.
We should have something like that.
Well, we do.
Oh,
we have
the appeals?
Where
the appellate process?
An American court is known as a court of law and equity. So a judge does have the freedom to make exceptions to the law for extenuating circumstances.
Discretion.
And prosecutors have the right to use prosecutorial discretion. So you could legitimately take into consideration that the person made a mistake, but they've made up for it. You can also take into consideration that we have limited resources. And right now isn't the right time to deport you, because we got to use all our resources as possible to deport the bad ones. So I had to make that choice when I was mayor. I had 400,000 roughly illegals in New York. We could do a much better job of finding them then, because they mostly came in and we had their names. Now we don't have their names. We're subjected to not knowing who they are, and much harder. The Immigration Service was capable of deporting no more than 2,000 a year. No matter what I did, if I gave them 10,000 people, they'd give me back 8,000. So I wanted to give them
government, right?
I wanted to give them the most dangerous 2,000, and the others I had to figure out, what to do with.
Yeah.
So this is a choice we've been making for a long time. And given the numbers we have, it makes sense that it works out that the dangerous one get the priority and they go. Some of the others might have to go because they get caught up in it. But there should always be room for an exception for the extenuating circumstances. I mean, sometimes we don't prosecute someone for a crime because of extenuating circumstances. I mean, a guy's child is dying, he has no money, and he does a nonviolent theft. I don't know, and he's never committed a crime before. I'm not going to put him in jail. That's called equity.
I like that.
So the law, we never apply always just a letter of the law in criminal law. You might do it in civil law because it doesn't have the same impact. Doesn't take away somebody's liberty.
Is that like the rules-based system versus case?
Yeah, I mean, if there's
versus precedent.
If there's a reason for it that's very human, very understandable, just not contemplated in the law, a judge has the right and a prosecutor has the right.
That's why we have trials.
To give you mercy. Yeah.
That's why we have courts.
And that's why prosecutors don't bring every case. I mean, I would exercise sometimes prosecutorial discretion to decline cases because the impact of the punishment would be way out of line with the wrongdoing. It's exactly what was distorted in January 6th. And the reason Trump pardoned them all, including the ones that may have attacked police officers, well, first of all, you couldn't distinguish very much between the two.
Right.
And number two, even the ones who attack police officers have been punished about 4 times more than the people who get punished for attacking police officers in left-wing jurisdictions, who don't get punished at all. In fact, they get encouraged to do it by people like Mondami. When you say something like that about the cops, you encourage criminals to abuse them.
Right. And if only Democrat prosecutors today had the same mindset as you did.
I don't even think they're prosecutors.
They're politicians.
When I was a prosecutor, the legal defense lawyers were tougher than the prosecutors of today.
Yeah.
They'd be shocked. The legal defense lawyers of the 70s and 80s, even into the 90s, would be shocked. They'd be yelling and screaming that these prosecutors are criminals.
Absurd, Mayor.
Well, Trump has said that he's against regime change. We do disagree on that. I believe the only way we ever get this behind us, even if we've done it now temporarily, is to get rid of the regime of terror. That regime will, even if we've suppressed them, it'll constantly be trying to figure out how to reassert itself, because whether you believe it's unrealistic or not, they don't. They believe they can become the Islamic empire. They can swallow the Jews up. They can swallow the Christians up. They can even swallow up the Sunni Muslims, even though they're the minority group.
Right.
So
we'll have to watch. And someone mentioned this to me, Mayor, and it made a lot of sense. How would he benefit if when they were asking him about regime change and he said, no, he wasn't looking at regime change? Well, isn't that the only answer in that moment? How the president,
no.
Or are you saying if he says yes, that sets the tone and gets the ball rolling even further along? I thought maybe
I would say I would prefer to see regime change.
Okay. But
on their own.
Okay. I'm just curious if the president may still be in that thinking
I think the president is. I think he thinks he can say that.
Yes. But you're saying
that's what's out there publicly, and it reduces.
Right. You're right. It does affect when the president speaks.
Ronald Reagan, when Solidarity came along,
that's a good point,
without any question said, we support you completely. He didn't send troops, but he didn't feel like he had to suck up to the Soviet Union.
Bingo.
We don't have to suck up to the Ayatollah.
I don't know.
Suck them out.
Yeah. I don't know what else.
I don't know why the
how weak they are.
I don't know why
they're weak.
I have no idea why we've been so deferential to this guy. Even going back to Ronald Reagan, I don't understand it. When he killed our Marines, we should have killed him.
Yeah, what was our response when that happened?
Nothing.
Did we know right away who it was?
Yes, 100%. They took credit for it.
It was Hezbollah, right?
Yeah.
Hezbollah,
but under the direction of the Quds Force.
And we knew, and at the time it was well known.
100%.
That is interesting because you know, thinking of Ronald Reagan, you don't really think of him as weak on that sort of stuff.
And they were bad news from the beginning.
Right. And
it took about 1 or 2 months to figure out their bad news. People should listen to my interview with Alireza Jeff Sardardi, which is I'm returning to doing my podcast, my Common Sense podcast, and this will be my first one. Alireza Jeff Sardardi is the deputy director of the NCRI, MEK, MCRI, both, and he has been involved in this movement from. He was in school in Tehran when the revolution took place and the Ayatollah was replaced. One of his schoolmates was killed by them, and several of his relatives. And he was almost killed a couple of years ago in Arizona by a fatwa, or by them.
Wow.
As I know, as I was almost killed.
They tried to take you out.
And in Paris.
Oh my goodness! Thank
goodness.
goodness.
People who have been prosecuted and convicted of it. Nobody cares about me.
Hey,
as far as
take
Biden,
that back.
As far as Biden was concerned,
take that back. This audience cares about you.
And what I don't understand with the president, regime change. This guy wanted to kill him. Now, who knows if he isn't behind the attempted assassinations? He sure has got to be on the suspect list. The Ayatollah put out a contract. We actually convicted a guy. There's a guy convicted of developing a plot under the direction of Iran to kill Trump a couple of years ago.
We're monitoring the comment section just real quick.
But nobody points that out because for some reason our press is in favor of the regime of terror.
Quick shout out to William Masters. William Masters, commenting on YouTube, says he was there in 1979 evacuating the embassy and U.S. citizens. He was part of the U.S. Navy. Thank you, William, for your service.
Yeah, you look at the things. You made a list of it, Ted. You're an expert on it now. You made a list of all the things they've done to us.
Well, that's right. And
there's no reason, there's no good reason for them to remain in power. And I really do believe that the president's hurting himself by keeping them there, because he's going to have a very hard time doing peace in the Middle East so long as the regime of terror is around, because it exists for the purpose of eliminating the Jewish people. That's why it's called the Islamic Republic. Ultimately, it wants to get rid of everyone who's not Islamic or put them under their control. That's the theory of it. So you take an Islamic country like Saudi Arabia. They don't have that objective. Saudi Arabia may have terrorist groups on the street and within Saudi Arabia. And there may have been a time, and this is why they get blamed to some extent for September 11th, there may have been a time when to protect themselves, they paid them off. But since Mohammed bin Salman, they've changed that. Right. Not to the extent where they've got the courage yet to recognize Israel with Iran sitting on their back, because they're afraid that Iran, which has some degree of influence on their street, will be able to use that to provoke a revolution against them. So the reason they didn't join the Abraham Accords is because they're afraid that the royal family will be overthrown by the Muslim extremists within Saudi Arabia, who still exist, although not as powerful as 5 or 10 years ago. And they're also afraid that not only do they exist, but that Iran would know how to utilize them. Now, this gets a little complicated. You wouldn't think that'd be true, because Iran is Shia, and the Muslims in Saudi Arabia were and are Sunni. And for centuries, they've hated each other. But on the subject of killing Jews and eliminating the big Satan, they put that all aside. And Iran has known how to do that to its credit in an evil way. They've been able to overcome the Shia distinction in making the case to other extremist Muslims, we're all together in this. Now, if you understand their modus operandi, once they get control, they'll kill all those Sunnis. The way they killed all of MEK, and they killed all of the other groups that helped them overthrow the Shah. The Islamic extremist Muslims almost used the Marxist playbook. It's amazing. They're not communists, but they almost use the same playbook of, while you're trying to take over and create an empire and destroy other countries, you play with anybody that's willing to help you do that. But you don't fall in love with them. And since this is driven by religion, not even politics, it has less of a chance of changing than it does with communists.
Just real quick, one of our moderators, great member of our audience, Tim Monbrod, says that President Reagan had sent the battleship U.S. Missouri to shell the area after the Beirut bombing. So we just want to point out that he was.
Did we do it?
Tim, if you're in the comment section, did we end up shelling that area?
Or just send it?
Or did we just send the USS Missouri? Let us know in the comments. Thank you.
You see, I've always been convinced from the time of the hostages that this is a guy we had to take out for what he did to America. that he would be, that I thought it was crystal clear from 1980 on that at some convenient point, it was time to get him and his regime out to make America safe. Because all you have to do is listen to them. We're the number 2 objective. And just think of the trouble in that period of time they've caused for us in the world. They probably killed more of us in Iraq than anybody.
Audience member Colin tells us, and I believe he's a big part of our moderating team as well. Colin, well, this name will give it away, where he immigrated from legally in 1986. Mayor, guess which country? His name is Colin James Michael McMenamin.
Well, Ireland. Even I could figure that out.
Shout out to Colin.
The great Ireland.
Who immigrated here legally in 1986. Shout out to Colin. Mayor, a very active chat tonight. Tim tells us that, yes, we shelled the area following the Beirut bombings. So,
well, that's good. At least, well, and it did slow them down. They didn't do it again for a while. But there were a lot of people that thought there should be a much more sort of Israeli response, where if you kill one of them, they kill 100 of you. But
right.
It was the beginning of their horrible activities. There were a lot of other things at stake then, including a possible nuclear war with Russia. So it does have, as we said, extenuating circumstances. But I still think if you could look back and say, would it have been better to take them out? Yes. So you can also look back and say, and here's where I get upset about the Iraq war, because I grant the fact that they could have the intelligence wrong. God, our intelligence services are terrible. So the idea that he had weapons of mass destruction and our intelligence services thought so, I don't know. That's not the biggest mistake we ever made. The consequences were great. And also, he pretended to have weapons of mass destruction because he wanted Iran to think he did. I think the big mistake is, as we were going into Iraq, we should have turned around and gone into Iran.
Right.
And it was a good time to do it. I mean, they had just been depleted by an 8-year non-determinative war with Iran. I mean, as depleted as Iraq was, which is why we were able to take them so easily, they were just as depleted.
Right.
And there's no doubt that we should have evaluated him as more dangerous than Saddam Hussein. But
right.
Somehow within our State Department, they love him.
Right.
I mean, there's something. I understand why they love China. It's evil, but they're communists.
While the mayor talks here,
the ones who
comment below
are
your
a lot of them don't even know they're communists.
I'm going to
they
put a
just
lot of these up
became
on
one
the
at
screen.
Yale or Harvard.
Let us know where you're tuning in
or
from.
some poor imitation of the two, where the professors feel they have to be communists too, so they can be as smart as the professors at Harvard, who don't teach anymore and have teaching assistants teach for them because they're basically crooks. They get paid for not working and for having somebody write the books for them. And we find out now that a lot of the books are plagiarized.
Right. So as we continue here,
laziness very easily leads you to dishonesty.
Right.
And if you're a college professor at one of these places, you haven't worked in years. You know how many of these kids get instructed by teaching assistants that don't have any training as teachers? It's ridiculous. The percentage of classes taught by teaching assistants are ridiculous. God, if you ask a professor to do more than about 3 hours a lecture a week, the guy will have a nervous breakdown.
Right. So as the mayor continues here, comment below. We haven't done this in a while. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know the city and state and country if that applies. We're going to put the chat up on the screen while the mayor
so now, Ted,
here.
you and I have to figure out again how we can get back to telephone calls. I've been thinking about that.
Yeah, we can do it. Look, we just
I think we need more help, though. We need a second. No, to do that, we're going to need a second person.
Well, we never say no, right? So we'll never say no, but you're right. Eventually, you can only have your hands and stuff.
Yeah, and then it would take away from
it degrades the show.
And this is pretty good if you can get questions that way.
Right.
And people are so used to that. Some of them prefer to do that than telephone calls.
Right. And we have a great active chat. And one thing I feel bad about sometimes, we don't spend as much time on them as we want to.
We're doing 2 shows, yeah.
And well, we got a lot going on, and it's the two of us here.
What about yesterday? How much did we do yesterday? Yesterday we did the podcast with Ali Reza that we're going to hopefully put out tomorrow.
Right. Tomorrow morning. So
where should people look for that? On X?
X. I think we're going to give it exclusively on X, and maybe eventually put it up on YouTube, because I think this is something we definitely want. We want people to see, right? It's so important. But it'll really give you an inside look.
Whether we put it on a subscription channel or we put it out generally.
Right.
So we'll decide tonight and let you know.
So we're deep into soccer time, but we have some people tuning in. Wizard Juice, that's the name of the user handle, tuning in from Honolulu, Hawaii. Ooh. Marsha in Columbus, Ohio. Black Madman, that's his name, not mine. Coming in from, he calls it beautiful Los Angeles.
Well, what is he asking or saying?
They're saying where they're tuning in from. Sydney, Australia. We have someone tuning in from Sydney, Australia. Southern California. Bluebird Grandma. Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Brian Nolan saying hello.
Lancaster.
Oh,
ask him if I'm not right. Lancaster.
Sorry. Oh, Lancaster.
Harry Rhodes taught me that, the head of Washington Speakers Bureau. I was about to go give a speech there when I gave like 150 speeches a year. And he came with me and he said, I'm coming with you because I don't want you to say Lancaster. They'll hate you forever. It's Lancaster.
No, that's why you always got to have someone local when you're doing those big campaigns, right, man?
And I'm a New Yorker, Houston instead of Houston.
Shelly's tuning in from Sun City, Arizona. Is that the name? Sun City, Arizona.
Where is that near? Is that near Phoenix?
I just go ahead and guess it's near Phoenix if it's in Arizona.
Arizona's beautiful.
Sonia tuning in from Bama, Alabama. You think they support Trump in Alabama?
I think the odds are 9 out of 10, yes.
Mark in London, England. Michelle tuning in from the Space Coast of Florida. The Space Coast, that's north of Palm Beach, correct?
Yes.
Yep. South Philly Johnny. Guess where South Philly Johnny's tuning in from? Guess where South Philly? Yeah. So shout out to Johnny in South Philly. Martina Ling in Boca Raton, Florida. We spend a lot of time down there.
Are you hungry?
Oh, come on, Mayor. You know the answer to that. Shelly says yes. Sun City is by
Can you put this on?
Arizona. Oh, of course. Okay, so we're gonna. What do we got here? Pizza.
Yeah, that's from Montauk Point, New York, from Gurney's. It was in the paper today. I thought it looked good.
My goodness, that does look good.
Right.
Should we copy Dave Portnoy and start doing the one pizza bite pizza reviews? That's what he does. He does one bite.
How can you do that?
I know. Is that even? That's a good point. So
I'm going to find a couple more pictures to show people. You can put that off for a minute.
Oh, here we are. So let's get some more shouting out. Rep in Virginia. Rafal, Rep in Virginia. Bluebird Grandma, north of Phoenix.
Where?
Sun City is north of Phoenix.
Okay.
Real Estate Susie. There's a Sun City, Florida as well, not to be confused. Newport Richey, Florida. Do you know where that is?
No, I don't.
So we got a lot of people tuning in from all across the country and around.
You want to see the great building in Dubai?
Yeah, you had. Oh, Mayor, I can do you one better with that picture. This is a picture the mayor took, who is a semi-professional photographer.
Look at the reflection on the water. That's the second tallest building.
Yep, I have it right here.
That's where we went for a boat ride.
It's very nice.
There I am. That's all in Dubai. So now we'll try something else for you.
Right. Well, we're deep into soccer time. We've had a very good audience.
I began this quest to show them Arizona.
John Roberts,
because my daughter
Tampa,
was
Florida.
There about 2 months ago, and we had to drive about 2 hours And some of those mountains are so beautiful. My gosh. It's like,
You're making people hungry in the chat, Mayor. We keep showing them pizza like that. Make them hungry.
Can we send them pizza?
You want to lose your appetite? I got a few faces I could show you.
Let me see. I'll see if I can find one more. So I should have these I should have these organized somewhere. Here's her wedding. I found her wedding. So that will. There. That's her wedding. See.
Nope. There it is.
There's her wedding.
That's the wedding. That's the mayor. You got to tell them who it is, Mayor.
That's my daughter, Caroline. That's her engagement party before. This is a couple of months before the wedding. Those are my two cousins and Maria.
Is any of them named Rudy?
No. That's
I know those guys.
That's on my mother's side of the family.
I've met a good amount of your family, Mayor, when I think about it. There's a number of Rudys.
There I am playing ping pong with my daughter.
Wait, keep that up. I got to take away the...
See how beautiful she is? And there's Rudy's coffee.
So another busy night, there's always so much news, right? We could stay on all night with what's...
But I'm gonna find those. I'll have to probably find them for tomorrow, but they're here somewhere. They somehow they get out of order too. I don't know how that happens.
Gary has pizza once a week. Once a week. I'd say I'm probably on a similar schedule. We used to have it once a week. We used to have it 2 or 3 times a week. We used to have it more than once a week, but we don't get it as much anymore. No, in New York, we'd get pizza quite a bit. Less in Florida and less up here.
But the pizza in Florida was okay. It's the Chinese food in Florida that's awful.
You're not a fan. You like the Chinese food I got you tonight?
Yeah, it's better here.
Chicken and broccoli.
I always thought the Chinese food in New Hampshire was better.
Yeah.
It's acceptable.
Right. And pizza is just convenient. Sometimes we have a small group around, and for us to order, it's just easy.
You can get good pizza in places other than New York. I mean, like New Haven claims to have invented it, but whether they invented it or not, they have very good pizza in Pennsylvania. They have very good pizza in Boston because they have a heck of an Italian neighborhood in Boston. They have good pizza in Philadelphia. They've got their own pizza in Chicago. It's a different kind of pizza. It's a deep dish pizza.
Right.
And Florida, because there have been so many New Yorkers who moved there, their pizza is excellent. They've even learned how to do bagels, which was harder.
Right.
I remember when I first lived in Washington, the bagel store would import them from New York every day. He'd have somebody at 4 o'clock in the morning drive 4 hours to his store. So he'd have it by 8. It was made in a bagel place in New York. Now they make their own. And there's a place here.
Right.
There's a place, well, it's over in Manchester, but there's a place that makes excellent bagels. And they're either Arab or Lebanese. They're not Jewish. But they learned how to make it because they lived in a Jewish neighborhood.
Right.
Oh, here it is. I got it finally. Now we can get off. Yeah. There you go.
Whoa.
Look at that.
That's a picture. Whoa. Who took those?
Rudolph Giuliani. Look at that.
Yeah, if you weren't a lawyer, maybe you
look at that.
Maybe you had a future in photography.
That one is the really, really beautiful one. Look at those formations.
This is from Arizona, out near Sun City, maybe.
This is what it is. Yeah, and I think this one is the best one. That one there. This is a little further away. That is my granddaughter.
There's Grace. Those that you watch the show, you've seen Grace on a few times.
Very, very serious. She realized she was a flower girl.
Those glasses are Arizona, red Arizona, says Dave. Beautiful pictures.
Wow.
Says CC. Shout out to Daryl, Tim, Grandma. Those are three of our regular moderators.
To where John McCain lived.
Right. We got to do something nice. I'd only
been there once before to visit John.
Yeah, we got to do something.
I remembered how beautiful it was. I have some pictures from that too.
Oh, Grasshopper tells me the people on Rumble feel ignored. I don't see any messages. Oh, are they not? Their messages may not be seen in the same as the other platforms. So our Rumble audience tomorrow night, I'll make sure we're spending time checking out our Oh, here we go. Fall Girl. Hello, Fall Girl. Little Fuzz. Let's see. San Jose, California. Damon Clerk tuning in from San Jose. Houston, Texas tuning in. Kansas City, Missouri. Little Fuzz is in Tucson, Arizona. We have quite the Arizona audience, Mayor. We've at least listed 4 or 5 people.
Arizona. You know, I really feel bad that I was never able to patch up the relationship between President Trump and Senator McCain, because I was a very close friend of Senator McCain's too, even though I ran against him. And we did have a little bit of a separation when I endorsed Bush in New York rather than him, because I thought Bush had a better chance of beating Hillary. And I told him, although I loved him very much, my greatest objective was to keep America out of the hands of Hillary Clinton. And this is before we found out what a big thief she really is, and a liar and obstructor of justice. But I just felt it. And he was really angry at me that I didn't endorse him. And then this is in the newspaper, so I can tell you this story. The Bush people in New York, when the primary was going to take place, in which Bush was going to beat him anyway, they put out this ad attacking McCain for voting against cancer spending. And they just wanted me to do it. And you know how I am. I said, I have to look into this because it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense that John would vote against legitimate cancer spending when he's the victim of cancer.
Right.
And I knew, because he had gone through my prostate cancer with me, because that happened right before September 11. I went to a parade with him once when I was in such pain. I had to go in the restroom and submit to taking pain medication, which I wouldn't do for a week and a half. Right. I wasn't able to walk anymore. And then he and I went out. I have to admit, went out drinking. We had a great night. But the people who were running the campaign for President Bush in New York were the Pataki people. Now, I got along well with the governor, but his people never got along with my people. They always fought with each other. And They thought they were going to get me good. And they put out they wanted me to do an ad for President Bush in which I'd go negative on John. And I had told them at the very beginning I would do anything but go negative on John. I didn't do it in my own campaign. My campaign manager used to drive me nuts. So I said, okay, let me take a look at it. So what he had done was he had voted against a bill that was one of these ridiculous pork bills that had all kinds of idiotic spending in it. And you have to vote up or down on it. And it had some spending for cancer, but probably it was going to some Democrat crooks, not real cancer people. And if it was 1% of the bill, it was a lot. And I said, well, he didn't vote against this because of cancer. Right. He voted against it because he was probably the most consistent guy who voted against pork, and I respected him for it, because the lobbyists couldn't push him around like they can most of them. And I said, I'm not going to do it. And then they put it out to the paper that I wasn't loyal to Bush.
Yeah.
And even the Bush people got mad at me. And all of a sudden, campaign's still going on. I get a call finally after 6 months from my old friend John. And he says, you know something, Rudy? You really are a guy of principle. And I was wrong to get mad at you. You're wrong about Bush. I'd be a better president. But you made it for the right reasons, your own reasons. I said, John, that's true. And I love you. And if you get the nomination, I'll work 90 hours a week to get you elected. I just happen to think he's got a better chance than you do.
Right.
He said, well, you're wrong, but I now know you're making the decision honestly, and I shouldn't have let it get in the way of our friendship. So then when we ran against each other, we had dinner and made sure that we did.
I love that.
I always knew that if I didn't win, I was going to endorse him, and he would endorse me. And it was really close that he almost dropped out and endorsed me. I'll tell that story tomorrow night. And I might as well tell it because it involves New Hampshire. So let's see what happens now with the play out of this. They'll be able to rebuild it in 2 months. Yeah, right. Bunch of lying leaker bums. And second, let's see how long this ceasefire lasts. I mean, the president got really angry that Israel went out and they took out one of their high-level officials.
Right.
But I mean, in a way, I'm surprised the president got that angry because he did give them, which is often done in a ceasefire. You often give the other side 6 or 12 hours to finish up what they had in motion.
So the president, I've listened to that a few times, Mayor. I wonder if he maybe thought they were kind of going against the spirit of it, like you said, finish up what you're doing, but they just
if you listen to him, he said, and 1 minute after, they go. Well, that's when they are allowed to do it.
Yeah.
1 minute after,
unless he thought they ramped up a bunch of ammunitions and that they weren't otherwise going to use.
Obviously, a guy they wanted to take out. They had him fingered, and they weren't going to give it up.
Yeah. Okay.
They also then took out a lot of people, and the other guys killed 4 people. But like usual, most of their rockets didn't work because they're no match. They're no match for Israel. I mean, I was surprised that Israel agreed to the ceasefire. They're doing a pretty good job of pummeling Iran, and I just look at it differently. I think it's inevitable that we're going to be at war with them, and let's get it over with. I thought it would have been much easier 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and it's going to be much easier than 4 years from now. So let's get the Ayatollah out. He wants to. I tell you why we should get him out. How about this? Because he wants to eliminate us. And I promise you, it's not personal because he tried to eliminate me. I don't take these things personally. I look at them for the country. Well, president's doing a great job, and it probably is the height of Monday morning quarterbacking to do that. But it is, I have felt even before Trump very strongly about this. I was in favor of taking him out 2 days after he arrived.
Right.
No, I was
alone.
in favor of taking him out as soon as we got the hostages back. I said, whatever we promised him, the CIA lies all the time, take him out.
Right.
Because you can do it again. And I did turn out to be right about that. If we had taken him out then or any time in that 10-year period, him or successor, a lot of kids would be alive today that are dead and their families had to, well. Once again, thank God that we have the military that we have. I truly believe what Trump said. There's no military in the world or in the history of the world that could have carried out that mission the way they did. No way that China can do that. No way. They're not creative enough. And there's no way that Russia can do it. God almighty, they can't beat Ukraine. And we don't realize also, unfortunately and tragically, all the wartime experience our generals and our command staff have. It's not just, they haven't done theoretical wars. It is true we're in too many wars. The benefit of that is you learn a lot. And we improve, we learn from our mistakes, at least in conducting the war. How about we don't learn about it in terms of getting into the war? And our problems in Afghanistan and in Iraq were not the war, it was the occupation and the nation building, which you'd think we would be good at because we have the experience to do that from the Second World War. But we didn't have the intelligence to go bring that expertise back. Because that really isn't in the nature of the military, that's more civilian. But then you got to convert it into the military. And we weren't smart enough to do that. We could have done an absolutely perfect job of transition in Iraq. Might not have been able to do it in Afghanistan. Afghanistan may be too far away from civilization yet, but Iraq's not, and Iran is right there. Iran would be a much easier. I'm not recommending nation building, God forbid, but I'm saying Iran of the three would be the easiest to do. They're the most civilized, educated group of people who are not necessarily mindlessly devoted to each other, because there are many different nationalities. They could use a rethinking of their organizational system and how they relate to each other. And they're ready for it. Internally, they're ready for it and want it. So let's see what happens. There's a lot more chapters in this book. And let's hope they work out as well as the one so far, because we're making the right moves. And then we'll get you more on Zohran Dani and see if we can find a way to trip him on his way to ruining the greatest city in the world. Well, please, now I add to the people of Iran and the people of Ukraine, who, by the way, are getting pounded by Putin again. I really wish we would take a look at that and give him a couple more weapons. But the only way we're going to get Putin to concede is to change the balance of power somewhat. I know that's uncomfortable, but we've got to give Ukraine the ability to inflict more pain on them. Because the only way you're going to move Putin off his position. He's not going to do it because he likes Trump. Even if he likes him, he's not going to do it because he likes Trump. Putin is a professional. He's a professional assassin, murderer. You got to know the mind of a professional assassin. Unfortunately, I met many of them. So let's pray for the people of Ukraine. Let's pray for the people of Iran that they overthrow the reign of terror. Let's pray for God's chosen people, the people of Israel, and ask God to keep them in his embrace. Let's ask him to ask him to keep us in his embrace too, if you got a little room, God. And pray for the president. He makes some very, very weighty decisions, and I really do think the decision the other night to hit them the way he did, it could be the decision that ultimately will save the world. So let's thank God for him too. So we'll be back tomorrow night, 7 o'clock on Lindell TV, 8 o'clock on X in the World. And tomorrow you keep looking at X, because we'll figure out how to get this excellent interview that I did yesterday with Ali Reza. What it is, it's a summary of everything you need to know about Iran. All the things that maybe are a little confusing. How do they get there, and who's there, and what their motives are. And he lived through it. And I thought it would be good if it were done by somebody who lived through it, who's also very, very smart and kind of a historian. And if we were doing a course, I'd say it's recommended reading. But we'll get it out. I think you'll find it very helpful. A lot of things will make a lot of sense when you hear what he has to say, and you also hear the role of MEK, which we're going to spend a lot of time on. You're getting to understand. So thank you very, very much for listening in, and keep praying for the USA. We're headed in the right direction, and we can head the world in the right direction too. That's why we're here. I'll see you tomorrow. God bless America. It's our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are able to apply our God